Welcome to the Renegade Nutrition Podcast, where we discuss all things wellness.
I'm Elanie Welch, nutritionist.
And I'm Kay Boyer, health enthusiast. Welcome back, Renegades.
Welcome, Renegades.
Welcome to another, oh gosh, I had this on the way. It was going to be like, Elanie makes my life go better every week on this day.
Oh.
That's going to be the new title. Okay.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Oh, to them, happy Monday.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's right. Happy Monday
It's
to you.
like a time matrix there.
Yeah.
Happy Monday.
And we're going into the future because this won't publish for several weeks.
I actually have this really cute Halloween sweatshirt that says "Hey Boo" on it with a ghost, and I was going to wear it today, but I was like, "Oh no, it's not going to come out for another 4 weeks." So I had to pay attention to that matrix.
Smart.
So,
we should have been in our Halloween costumes
4 weeks ago. Yes, we should have. Yes.
I'm going to dress Noah up as Boo from Monsters Inc.
She
already looks
you
like
could
her.
be Sully.
Yeah. I think I'm going to make Chris be Sully and I'll be Mike because I'm just going to put a giant green eye on
Okay, and you're a little shorter, so that makes
It
sense.
makes sense.
Yeah. You're definitely Mike. That's adorable. My boy is a blow up hedgehog. He loves hedgehogs.
Oh my God.
And it's a blow up costume, and his little head is in the middle. It's
That's
so
so
cute.
cute.
And then what was my daughter? Was Barbie.
Barbie.
Yeah, that was fitting. It's the year for it.
It's the year for
Yep.
it. Because there was a movie that came out.
Yes. Very popular. Like broke the record something.
Wow,
yes.
really?
Yes.
I did not keep up with
Anything
culture.
pop culture. Yeah, anything other than gardening. I don't know.
gardening and homesteading and nutrition.
Yes.
I don't.
Once in a while, the big things I catch, like Barbie. I did catch that one. And Taylor Swift is dating someone new, a football player. Do you know this?
Nor do I care.
Oh, I love this. Okay, I learned Travis Kelce is how you say it. Oh gosh, that's how much I'm in on it. But that's the other thing in pop culture that you should look up.
Is Sushi dating?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
or just who's dating who in general?
Well, Taylor and Travis, and now she's going to the Kansas City Chiefs football game, and now everyone's watching football again.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as she's happy.
No, as long as we get a pop song out of it. That's what we need.
Okay.
But yes, her being happy. Yes.
It's like so funny because you could ask me about the latest like research on saccharin and I could answer that, but I could not tell you for the life of me who Taylor Swift is dating.
I love it so much.
If you want to talk about some rat studies, I got your back.
Living to 120, the latest research.
Yes. Cutting edge. Have you guys heard the news? It's like the most obscure research in the corner of the internet. That's what I know.
And you geeking out to it.
Yeah.
I love it so
you guys,
much.
this is huge news.
I know. And I'm like, who won the Run for a Million reigning champion? And that's what I'm into.
Okay.
We all get off on our own
I don't
thing.
even know what you just said.
See, right? We all have our own genius.
That's funny.
I love it. Okay, so what are we actually here to talk about?
Okay, today we are here to talk about
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift reading food labels. How to read food labels. And we're going to talk about how food labels are misleading.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Okay, I'm here for it. They can be misleading, and I can't read half the words.
Yes,
So,
which is usually a good sign just to walk away from it. But.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. And eat foods without labels.
Yeah.
For heven's sakes.
Yes.
That was the whole podcast, friends.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Go be renegades.
On today's podcast, we talk about who Taylor Swift is dating and why you should eat food without labels.
We might go viral if that's our headline.
True.
That's funny.
No. Yes. So we're going to talk about how food labels can be misleading and how to read them. And I'll start with the obvious, which Kay just brought us into.
Yep.
If you buy whole, real foods
Yes.
from reliable sources, you do not need to worry about food labels.
They did not come in plastic and boxes with printed ink, cardboard wasting. Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right. Like a carrot is a carrot. Eggs are eggs.
Yep.
Chicken is chicken.
I can read all those words.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Easy to read.
Yes. So again, I mean, we'll get into this in this episode, but as long as you're buying food from local sources that you know and trust,
Yes.
because meat can be tricky when you buy grocery store meat. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Because sometimes it's not just one ingredient like you think it might be. But if you're buying from a local farmer, if you're buying from a community-supported agriculture share like a CSA, if you're growing your own food, if you have your backyard chickens, you don't have to worry about it, obviously. But, you know, of course, that's like saying, you know, abstinence is the best way to prevent an STD, right? Like, it's pretty obvious. The easiest way to avoid the difficulty of navigating food labels is to buy foods that don't have them. Like, that seems pretty obvious, right? But, like, I understand that even when we're eating a whole foods diet, a lot of times convenient foods are still part of that.
Right. In the modern world, I even try to take them out, but I still love some of them. So I squeak some in, and I love them.
I do too. I mean, we still probably want crackers. We might want like sweet potato chips or salad dressing or things that make our life a little bit more convenient. Yeah. Because when you're eating a whole foods diet, it can be a lot of work.
Yes.
And sometimes you just need the quick thing.
Yeah.
So I get it. I buy them too.
Yeah.
I'm not here to judge.
Hedonism here.
Yeah. So I'm here to help you out because I've definitely, over the years, experienced the pains of wanting convenience foods and then reading labels and being like, wow, even in the health food section, these things are full of poison. True. What is happening?
True. Like, how is there canola oil in everything, sugar in everything?
Yes.
Some words, a lot of words I can't read in everything.
Yes. So I will help you out so that you feel like after you leave this episode, you can still buy some convenience foods and you know what to look out for and you know how to walk away from misleading labels because that is one of the biggest things.
Yeah. I want to know.
Certainly, if you know how to decipher the information, you can make healthier choices. And that's what this podcast is all about, helping you make healthier choices. So I'm sure you have seen the clever marketing labels and schemes in grocery stores. Certainly, I've fallen prey to it. I have not had alcohol now in years, but I remember when I used to like buy wine, how I bought it was how the label looked. Like I'm like totally a label person.
Yes. You mean like how cute the front label is?
Yes. If the label is cute, I'm gonna try it.
Yes.
Because I don't know anything about wine, so that was my like. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this label or like alcohol in general. I don't know anything, so
same.
Yeah, I was like, oh,
like
this
the
label
Dark
is
Horse brand. I was like, oh, that's such a cool brand. I'm gonna get.
Of course, because it had a horse.
I know. So and it looks so BA. Yeah.
So their marketing department loves people like us.
Yes.
And it's the same with convenience foods too. If you think about like imagery that's promoted a lot of times on packaging. So if you're in the health food section, let's say, and it's like, oh, I'll just make something up like Mary's Farmhouse cheese or whatever. Yeah. And then it's like this gorgeous picture of this farm and these cascading hills, right? And that might not be anything like what Mary's Farmhouse looks like
in real life.
But it sucks you in because you see it and you're like, oh, that's natural.
Yes.
It's all marketing.
Yes.
So that just, you know, for those of you who are like me, who are suckers for like pretty labels that evoke emotions, you should know that's literally what their marketing team is paid to do. It doesn't have anything to do with the reality of the company or the product that they're offering. They know. Yes. They are trained to know what makes people engage with the product, feel emotional things about a product, and then they put those things on the label. So
sly little devils.
That's not really what this episode is about, but it's just a good thing to always keep in mind as if you're like me and you're kind of drawn to those pretty labels. That's the first thing to pay attention to is, okay, I'm going to read the ingredients list first, and then I will decide if the product is actually as beautiful as it looks.
Yep, smart.
And I'm sure you've seen some of the marketing schemes like water bottles that are labeled gluten-free or this is real. I should take a picture the next time I find one. I've literally seen water bottles.
Oh, I thought you were just being facetious.
I have literally seen water bottles marketed as gluten-free.
I love it. This is hilarious.
And it's funny marketing, right? Because you look at it and you're like, wait a minute, are other water bottles not gluten-free?
Oh, you're right. It makes me think.
I guess I need to buy these ones so I can be sure that it's gluten-free. gluten-free. Yes, that, my friends, is misleading. It's marketing, and it's meant to make you question your life and all of your choices, right? Or you see a package, this hasn't ever drawn me in, but I know it draws a lot of people in, like a package of candy that says, this is a cholesterol-free food, right?
Yes. It's
those like circus peanuts or something that's not even made from real
real
food ingredients, but it's cholesterol-free.
That's hilarious. I have my kids on that, so I do let my kids have like cereal 1-2 days a week, and on the box it'll say that. We always do the non-sugary kind, whatever. But my kids just scoffed the other day. They're like, they're acting like this is cholesterol free. Of course, there's no animal in this. So I already have my kids on it.
They're on it. Funny. Yeah. So, I mean, as we're talking about it in this context, of course, you're thinking like, oh, that's funny. Those labels are nonsense. But they really do sucker you in.
Yeah.
When you're in a grocery store and you're looking at labels and you're in that mindset, like taken out of context, it's funny. But in situ, it's pretty commonly tricky.
Yeah.
Because suddenly it makes you question things like, oh, do I need to get the gluten-free seaweed? Right? Okay. So unfortunately, much of the food found even in the health food aisles is processed, and it's full of nutrient deficient and even harmful ingredients. So just because a food is in the healthy section, which is the first label, right? The very first label you see if you're in the grocery stores, you're looking at the like health food section. So you're like, okay, I'm going to be safe there. That's the first misleading label. Not even a label on an individual food, just a label for a section. That's misleading because those products might still be full of things like industrial seed oils, like sunflower oil, safflower oil, canola, cottonseed, corn oil, rapeseed oil, all of that great stuff, right? Trans fats, which can exist in a food even when the food label says it's trans fat free. Because manufacturers can say it's trans fat free if it was trans fat free when it left the factory. But what you have to understand is when there are industrial seed oils in it, when they're exposed to oxygen and light and heat, like they are when they're traveling across the world to reach your pantry, then those industrial seed oils can convert and become trans fats. So trans fats can exist in foods even when they say they're trans fat free.
I didn't know that.
Depressingly.
Right. Depressingly, yep.
Yep, they might be full of processed and artificial sugars. They probably have refined grains. If they're gluten-free, they probably contain rice flour and all sorts of other types of flours, cassava and whatever, potato starch. They might have processed soy.
Oh, wait, I'm going to pause. So cassava flour, potato starch, rice flour.
Are just a few examples.
But those are good or bad?
Oh, we'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there. Okay. Yeah. Yes. And then they might have preservatives, so thickeners like xanthan gum, artificial flavors, additives like food dyes. Yes, even in the health food section, because a lot of things that end up in the health food section are like, oh, this is the sugar-free option, or this is the gluten-free option, or this is the dairy-free option. It doesn't mean it's healthy. It just means it doesn't have those ingredients in it. So at first glance, it's not really easy to know how nutritious a food is based on the packaging. And sometimes ingredients are hidden even in seemingly simple real foods. So for example, conventional chicken breasts that you buy in a package at the store can have added chicken broth, which they don't list the ingredients of that. So you don't know what's in that broth. Could be MSG. And that can comprise up to 15% of the total package weight. That's what's allowed.
Really? Interesting.
And they don't have to put it on the label. So, not to like freak you out if you're buying chicken, obviously buying whole chicken in the grocery store is better than buying like processed chicken nuggets or something. So keep doing that. But you should know that it's not as simple as it seems.
Wait, that's interesting because I follow that Doc Amen clinics and he's a psychiatrist and he does brain scans. And he had a guy in there who was like, I keep losing my mind and getting so mad at my wife. She's about to divorce me. Tell me what food is triggering me. So they did a bunch of brain scans, and MSG was what triggered him, and he would just lose his mind. He'd get so angry.
Yeah.
And now to think, he's like, well, I didn't eat my Doritos. I didn't eat MSG, but I just had this chicken soup, And then inside of it, there's sneaky MSG.
Sneaky MSG.
Oh my. Okay. Because it affects your brain. So be aware of that too.
Yeah. Monosodium glutamate. If you see that on a label, that is MSG.
Yep.
It's not going to necessarily say MSG because people know how to recognize MSG, but they don't necessarily know monosodium glutamate. That's what you're looking out for. Also, manufacturers are not required to disclose ingredients if they make up another ingredient and are present in small amounts. So, for example,
what's like a makeup?
Natural flavoring. You probably see that everywhere, right? Natural flavoring.
I wondered how can they make up a flavor? How does that? Okay.
Yeah, it's made up of a bunch of ingredients that manufacturers are not required to disclose. And although natural flavoring sounds better than artificial flavoring, and a lot of times you see both, right? It'll say made with natural and artificial flavors. Natural flavoring is not necessarily much better because some of the things that they use in natural flavoring still can be carcinogenic. They're just natural.
Interesting.
Right.
How arsenic is also natural, that kind of
any like metal or
Interesting.
Yeah. So again, this isn't like meant to be the freak everybody out episode. It's just bringing awareness to how marketing is clever, because when you look at something and you see natural flavoring, I think what you're probably picturing is, fresh pressed berries were used to flavor this berry fruit roll. But in reality, it's not. It doesn't have to come from fruit.
Guy is chemically engineering it.
Yes, and they don't have to disclose what those ingredients are, which is why you always just see natural flavoring regardless of what the flavor is.
Wow.
Additionally, companies are not required to disclose ingredients that are considered to be processing aids. These are used in small amounts during the production process and do not, in theory, end up in the final product. But it includes chemical solvents and solutions that you probably wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole if you were given the choice, and your food has been run through those solvents for the process of extracting flavors or extracting certain ingredients or whatever it is. So they're not required to put that on the label, but you may be pretty freaked out if you knew what solvents were being used to separate your food to end up with that final product.
I was thinking like I went out to get bone broth and I was like, what kind should I get? And I was like, there's some in the cardboard box section of the store. And you're like, how about you get frozen? I never thought for half a second to question shelf-stable food.
Right.
Like, because I'm just like, no, it can be on a shelf. But in nature, how could you ever have soup sit out at room temperature for months?
Right.
And it still be okay?
Right.
I never thought of that until you were like, get it frozen, yo.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because think of how all those, because you want to eat living food to care for our living bodies. But if it's able to be on a shelf for 5 months, it can't be living.
Right.
Interesting.
Just
food for thought.
Yeah. Yes. That could be a whole episode of its own, but there really is like shelf stable foods aren't living anymore, right? Because they've removed the enzymes, they've removed all the beneficial bacteria, and those things are what help our bodies digest them. So it is helpful if you're like an end of the worlder and you're worried about food, running out of food to have the shelf stable stuff to survive, which, if the end of the world comes, those people will be the ones who survive and enjoy your like hellscape. That you have to yourselves now.
Yes.
But outside of that, really what you want is food that's perishable because you want it to be living and you want to consume it fresh because that's when food has the most nutrition, is when it's fresh.
Yes, and feed your cells.
So how do you decide whether a packaged food is nutritious or at the very least not unhealthy for you? So we're going to start with the label. So here are some of the most misleading labels that we might see on a package that make us think, this is healthy, but it may not be. So the first one is gluten-free, right? Products that proudly display a gluten-free banner, oftentimes people see that and think, this is a healthier choice.
Yeah.
Right. And I agree that gluten is not a great option for many people, especially because in America, a large proportion of people have gluten sensitivity because of the way wheat products are processed. And whether you're sensitive to it or not, the protein zonulin, which is present in gluten, is damaging to the gut and can induce a leak, like a temporary transient leaky gut environment. So whether you're sensitive to it or not, gluten isn't great. But just because a product doesn't have gluten doesn't mean it's nutritious, right? There's a difference.
True.
Right.
Darn
because
it.
oftentimes there's still another grain that's replacing it, like corn or rice flour. So rice flour may be better, quote unquote, better than wheat flour because it doesn't have gluten, but it's not necessarily nutritious. It's kind of a filler, right? In fact, wheat flour has a higher nutrient dense profile than a lot of the flours that replace it. So like rice flours and I am kind of like blanking, but like sorghum and cassava and potato starch. A lot of those aren't necessarily more nutrient dense. Wheat might actually be more nutrient dense pound for pound, but the gluten's a problem. But just because it doesn't have gluten doesn't mean it's nutritious.
So rice wise, are you like, you're better off just eating the rice?
I would say anytime you process something, right?
Yeah.
So like anytime you grind it up and run it through a mill and compound it into something else, you're just taking away some of what makes it, you're making it not a whole food anymore, right? So if you just think of it on a very simple level, having rice by itself, it's intact, it's being eaten the way nature created it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's like with the fiber and the whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what kind of slows down, say, the like glucose bomb that rice might be, is having the fiber of the rice. When you grind it up,
Got it.
then it's easy to absorb. It's higher in glucose. So I totally have bought products and will still buy products that have rice flour in them.
Yeah.
You know, from time to time, but they shouldn't be
Right.
making up a majority of your diet. So
Yes.
when you're thinking about making product swaps, so if you're having toast for breakfast every morning and a sandwich at lunch and pasta for dinner, swapping all of those out for gluten-free versions is like, maybe it's going to be better if you're sensitive to gluten for sure, but it's still not nutrient dense for you, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. And if that's the first change you have to make, great.
Yes.
But that's not like, it's not like suddenly those meals are now nutritious. Right?
I think it took me a couple years to get there, but I hear you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And we still have like, I really can't have gluten. I know I'm sensitive to it. I do blood tests. I know I have very high reactivity to it. So every once in a while, like we have packages of like brown rice noodles at home because I'm Italian, and every once in a while I want a pasta
noodle
dish, right? So this is not like, but it's not our nightly dinner. It's like a once a month, if that, meal.
Yes.
So I'm not trying to like demonize everything. I'm just saying being gluten-free on a label doesn't mean it's healthy. And really those things are part of my 20, you know, for my 80-20, brown rice noodles are part of my 20. They're not part of my 80 because I know that that's still not a nutrient dense food.
Yes. Smart.
Yeah. And also, like in order to mimic the texture of gluten-based products, a lot of times products that are gluten-free need to include ingredients like xanthan gum and guar gum and soy lecithin and carrageenan and all of those things. And some of those ingredients like xanthan gum and carrageenan are gut irritants. So anybody who is dealing with gut issues, microbial imbalances, or leaky gut should not be consuming those additives on the regular. So again, the gluten-free might seem like a better choice, but because the gluten has been removed, now they've introduced additional gut irritants, so it may not be much better.
Fair.
Most of them are pretty low risk, even if you're just having them on the occasional basis, right? So what we just talked about. But if you are having healthy, quote unquote, healthy processed foods, and they're making up the majority of your diet, they're still problematic. So, and gluten-free foods are oftentimes loaded with sugar because they're trying to make up for mouthfeel, they're trying to make up for taste discrepancies, and they still can contain industrial processed seed oils, food dyes, etc. So don't stop reading the label once you see gluten-free.
Yes.
Just because you pick up a product and it says gluten-free cake mix, like, don't stop there, right? It might still have food dye in it. It might still have tons of sugar. It will still have tons of sugar if it's cake mix. But
yes, you're right.
Right. Okay. I think we've officially beat that horse to death. So the next label is organic. So in order to have an organic label, crops need to be grown without synthetic fertilizers, and they have strict guidelines on what pest and weed control products they're allowed to use. But what you should understand is that probably the most important thing to understand in today's world is that because of the rising popularity of organic foods, which yay.
Yes.
Big Ag has gotten their hands on organic and has basically diluted the term so much that it doesn't mean much.
Okay.
Boo.
Boo.
Which is an episode unto itself. I'm not going to get into that today. But unfortunately, these days, the term organic doesn't carry all the weight that it used to. Now, I think this is a good problem, right?
Yeah. Yes.
We are going in the right direction. When you consider that probably 15 years ago, you wouldn't be able to walk into like Walmart or Costco and see all these organic products.
True.
Now you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to the fact that in a very short time, we voted with our dollars, right? Consumers wanted organic. So now these bigger box chains are providing organic. Unfortunately, in order to provide organic foods to a big box chain, you can't really be having what the like mainstay of processes that we would consider organic, right? It's very conventionalized organic.
Fair.
Because they're not
like if it's processed at all, we're kind of it's sort of like
and it's like they're not using any of the synthetic fertilizers that aren't approved, but they're still probably using some that are approved. They're still using herbicides, just they have to be on the approved list of herbicides. So it's not natural. It's not what you're picturing. It's still killing a lot of insects. It's still very destructive to the environment. It doesn't mean that they're not eroding the soil or that the soil that those things are being grown in is nutrient dense, right? So now organic is not necessarily what it used to be, which was smaller farms doing things regeneratively, like using sustainable practices. It's big conventional farms that switched one synthetic fertilizer for another.
Okay.
Know what I mean?
Yep.
So there are still some harmful chemicals that are being used, even in organic. They're just not ones that have been as researched or shown to be carcinogenic or whatever, or they're being used in smaller amounts that the USDA has deemed safe. Okay. So while I will always advocate for organic fruits and vegetables, because in a supermarket, they're going to be the best option you have, probably, there's now a demand for what a lot of companies are calling beyond organic, and permaculture products and fair trade and sustainably grown and
I
those
love
sorts
all
of
those
things.
words. They get me all smiley.
Right? Yeah. So regardless, organic produce is going to be lower in pesticides and it's going to be higher in micronutrients. So it is always better than conventional. So I'm not trying to talk you out of buying it. But you might be surprised at what is still allowed. And I think it's important to be educated.
Yeah.
And so you're not just naively going through the grocery store and being like, great, this is organic, this is gluten-free, like everything I have is healthy.
Yeah.
You should just be aware.
Yes.
Because then we can make informed decisions. It's best to really know where your food comes from. You should know the farm and the farmer. If what you're worried about is sustainability and soil health and low impact and chemical free, etc., then you should know your farmer. That's going to be the only way you can really be assured of it.
Yeah.
Now, meat that's labeled organic, it can only be labeled organic if the animals were fed organic feed, if they were not given antibiotics or hormones, and if they were raised in living conditions that accommodate their natural behaviors. But there's a lot of leeway on what living conditions that accommodate natural behaviors look like, right? You might be kind of sad to see the conditions that even organic animals live in, because organic does not preclude CAFO type arrangements.
Okay, what's CAFO?
Confined animal feeding operation. So when you picture like all those cows in a feedlot, or like pigs in a hog barn, or chickens inside of this like building, right, all crammed in together, they can still be organic because what they're being fed is organic feed.
But they're not like on grass. They're like in
they're not happy grazing out on frolicking fields, even though that might be what the label shows, because it's not illegal to put a picture that's not real.
True.
But the animals themselves might be living in like dirty soiled environments, right? That it doesn't mean they have the ability to roam and be free. So even when you see, for example, with like eggs or chicken, even when you see free range on the label, it simply means that the animal has the ability to go outside, but they might not have much of an outside to explore. And if you've ever seen those like chicken houses that have one tiny door, like a 1 foot by 1 foot door, and the chickens can go out of it, but when there's like 6,000 or 7,000 chickens packed in the house, how many of them do you think are finding that door? But they can be labeled free range.
Oh, sad. Okay.
If they have that door, right? So I'm not saying that all companies that say they're free range are doing that. I'm just saying you can do it. And cage free only means that the chicken wasn't shut up in a cage, which is certainly an improvement, but it doesn't mean that they have space to move or grass to peck at.
That was something I had to learn. I was buying what's that one called? Cage free.
Cage free.
I was buying that thinking it was free range. I was like, my golly. Golly.
Yeah, they can still be living in pretty horrific conditions, and cage free doesn't mean it's organic either. And organic only means the feed they're giving is organic, which doesn't,
it doesn't mean much.
Doesn't mean a whole lot. Organic cows and pigs. Oh, another thing I was just going to cover on the chickens too is like vegetarian diet. Like you probably see that like, oh, chickens fed a vegetarian diet. Chickens do not like vegetarian diets. I know, I have chickens. They will eat frogs. They will eat snakes. They will eat mice. They will eat insects, and they will eat all of those things before they ever touch their like feed that we give them.
Interesting. You know what? I watched a chicken YouTube on how to have chickens, and you can throw your like meat carcass out, and they'll pick off the meat off the bone. I was like, I had no idea.
Oh yeah, I've literally given them well, we have organic bones, so I use them for broth. But if we've had like old meat that I want to get rid of, I just give it to the chickens. I will not give them chicken. That's where I draw the line.
You're right. It seems a little wrong.
Seems so right. But otherwise, honestly, they like protein and animal foods. They are carnivores. So a chicken being fed a vegetarian diet, it's good to know that they're not being fed industrial meat waste, right? Like you don't want to think about them being fed all the scraps that weren't fit for human consumption.
Yeah.
But from a chicken standpoint, eating a vegetarian diet means nothing, right? It just means they're being fed grains, which they're not meant to live on. They are literally the living relatives of dinosaurs. They're meant to eat carnivorous diets, and they give you the most nutrients in their eggs if they're eating a carnivorous diet. Vegetarian diet is meaningless. Hey there, Renegades. Elanie here, briefly interrupting this episode of the Renegade Nutrition podcast. I wanted to highlight a company that Kay and I have recently discovered that we love, and that company is Bulletproof. Bulletproof sells high-quality nutritional supplements, and every product that Kay and I have tried from them personally, we have found to be excellent. It's important when you choose a supplement that it contain the bioactive forms in order for it to be effective, and Bulletproof has just the right forms in just the right amounts. Right now, if you go to bulletproof.com and use the code RENEGADE15 at checkout, you can receive 15% off your order. That's Renegade, RENEGADE 15. Use that code at checkout to get 15% off, and we'll earn a small commission too. Thanks for your support. All right, back to this week's episode of the Renegade Nutrition Podcast. So organic cows and pigs are still fed grain, which is not in their natural diet and can make them sick. It hurts their tummies, which are evolved to digest grass.
All 6 of their tummies.
All 6 or 7.
Or 7? Oh, is it 7 tummies? I don't remember. All 7 of their tummies.
So again, organic for like cows and pigs doesn't mean it was better for the animal. It's better because what you're eating is not filled with hormones and antibiotics and pesticides, but it's not necessarily a happier life for the animal. So if that's what you're worried about, then you're looking for pasture raised. And I'm going to get into that in 1 second too. And just so you know, grain-fed animals are much higher in omega-6s, which can be inflammatory, and they're much lower in omega-3s. So they're less nutrient dense for sure. Even the term grass-fed is starting to be corrupted by big ag.
Oh, God.
It's sad, but now grass-fed can mean that a cow is living on a dirt plot, but it's eating hay, right? Because technically that's grass. So it's not the life spent frolicking out on pasture that you're probably picturing. So if they are pasture-raised, which isn't really a regulated term, but most farms will do the right thing. If they're saying it's pasture-raised, their animals are out on pasture. If they're grass-fed, it simply means they're being fed grass. It doesn't mean they're out on pasture.
Dang.
Right? This is why some of the larger box stores can carry huge quantities of grass-fed animals. Again, so much better than grain-fed, right? It's better for the animal's digestive system. They feel better. It's a better life for them, but it's probably not what you're picturing. So I'm not trying to discourage you. If the only way you can get like good grass-fed meat is by buying it in quantities at a large box store, that's still 100 times better than buying conventional grain-fed meat. Better for you, better for the animal. But it's not optimal either. So a pasture-raised animal, if it really is being raised on pasture, because again, it's not necessarily a regulated term, but if it really is pasture-raised, then it's spending its life out on pasture. But again, there isn't necessarily a guarantee of this if you don't know the farmer. And you should know that if a product doesn't say grass-fed, grass-finished, it could be grass-fed and then grain-finished. So if it just says grass-fed, it's quite possible that they fed, like the cow, for example, grass for the first half of its life and then fed it grain for the second half of its life to fatten it up. So you think you're buying an entirely grass-fed steak, but in reality, it was finished on grain.
I know, here, controversial here, but in Iowa, the men around me are like, I want it to be corn-fed or corn-finished so it tastes better, you know.
Yeah,
so,
well.
Anyway, so there's that here in Iowa.
I mean, that's all just, and I don't want to say anything disparaging because so many of our listeners here are from the Midwest and have hog farms, and that's how they make their living. And so,
which is a tricky modern problem. Like that is like the trouble of the modern world.
Right.
And that's why we're trying to make a change, be the change, at least pivot your farm any way you can to a little bit healthier as you go. And sticky.
But it's essentially science that cows did not evolve to eat grain. So I'm not trying to offend anybody with that information. It's just the truth.
Yes, right.
We're just sharing the truth. It's not healthy for the cow. They don't feel good on it. It's stressful for them. It's not meant to be in the meat that we're eating. We're not meant to be in contact with grains as much as we are. And we have no idea how much we rely on grains.
Yes, and since the Industrial Revolution, now that's what's pushed. And now we're reaping the consequences of that.
Absolutely.
In our health.
Yeah. So if you are looking at buying organic or pasture-raised for animals, here's how I would rank it, right? So the best is to buy local and to know your farmer. So buy a meat share, visit the farm, know the farmer. If you buy a meat share, it's a big upfront cost, but it is much less expensive overall to do it that way than it is to buy individual like grass-fed or pasture-raised steaks, right? If you're buying things individually, it's going to cost you a lot more. If you buy in bulk, it's going to be a lot more affordable. You need freezer space, but anybody could do it if they plan for it. And freezers are like everywhere. Just go on like Facebook Marketplace and people are practically giving them away. So
in Iowa, if you live in the city, come out to Iowa and then haul it back.
Or just put your meat outside for the winter. Just kidding. It gets too warm some days.
Dig a hole.
Yeah. So best is to buy local and to know your farmer. Second best is pasture raised. And you can visit, like, if you find a product that says pasture raised and you want to know, is it really raised on pasture? Just look up the farm online. I mean, a lot of those places have websites, they have pictures. Again, people could lie about that. They could put up fake pictures, but you can only do what you can do, right? And if you want to do the research, you at some point just kind of have to trust that the farmer you're buying it from is doing the right thing.
Right.
So that's second best, is buying pasture raised. Better is buying grass fed and organic. Good is buying just plain organic. And bad is buying conventional. I shouldn't say bad. I don't want to make anybody feel bad, but least good.
Least healthy. Yes, or
Least good.
Beneficial for the environment. Okay.
Yes, is buying conventional. So remember, and this might be kind of obvious, but I feel like it would be remiss if I didn't say it. Just because a product says it's organic doesn't mean it's healthy. Just like if it says it's gluten-free, it doesn't mean it's healthy, right? Like you can get organic cinnamon crunch cereal, right? That has a huge amount of added sugar per serving, and it has wheat and sugar and rice flour and sunflower oil, and it can all be organic, but that doesn't mean it's healthy, right? So that's another misleading thing, is like when you're going through the aisle and you're like, ooh, organic gummy bears, cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's essentially meaningless.
My teeth hurt just looking at them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the next label trap that people fall into is like X number of whole grains per serving. Yeah, that's one we fall into. The conventional USDA food pyramid, which has now been reconfigured as My Plate, tells us that we should be eating 6 ounces or about 170 grams of grains per day. Half of which should be whole grains. So for this reason, food manufacturers will boast that their products contain so many grams of whole grains per serving, because that's what people are taught to look for.
Yep, we were raised with that.
Right.
Yep.
Either the food pyramid, if you're our age, or now it's been My Plate for, I don't know, since like 2005 or something, I think. So, right. Having 170 grams of grains per day is not actually part of a healthy diet. We'll just
that's a lot.
Start there. That's a whole lot. And whole grains can be fairly meaningless. So you can have multi-grain Cheerios, for example, that has 19 grams of whole grains per serving, and it has oats and corn and sugar and cornstarch as the first 4 ingredients. Like, nothing super beneficial in there. Oats on their own are okay, but when you start processing them, again, you're removing all of the whole, you're removing the fiber, you're breaking them into powder. It's not...
Yep.
Right. Okay. So there's nothing whole about a product that's been crushed and made into Cheerios, right? They've just been processed beyond belief. And just because their holes and their shells are included doesn't mean they're any more nutritious for you. They've been combined with sugar. They've been combined with starches. It's a processed food. So saying it has X number of whole grains doesn't mean anything. The only real health claim whole grains have that people lack in their diet is fiber. And the better way to increase fiber is to consume more vegetables, starchy and non-starchy. That's how you can get fiber. Eat more fruit, eat more vegetables. You don't need grains for fiber.
Yep. And then the veggies have all the nutrients too.
And if you're going to have grains, have them in their whole natural form. So not ground up and turned into something else. Again, just have the rice if you want rice. Have the quinoa, whatever.
Yep.
But having products made from those things ground up with sugar is not going to have the same health benefits. So don't fall for that.
Yep.
X number of whole grains.
Processing again.
BS. The next label trap that people fall into is low in saturated fat, or low or no cholesterol, or cholesterol-free foods, or fat-free foods. Okay, sadly, the My Plate recommendations from the USDA continue to propagate the lie that saturated fat and cholesterol are to blame for heart disease. This is not true, okay?
You heard it here, folks.
And like you've heard it here 1,000 times. Despite the fact that it wasn't until we replaced saturated animal fats with industrial seed oils that cardiovascular disease started to increase. At best, it remained stable, but it definitely increased when we started consuming vegetable oils. We still are trapped with the lie that cholesterol consumption is correlated with cardiovascular disease. Your body makes cholesterol. Very little of the cholesterol that is in your blood is from foods you are eating. It is what your body is manufacturing. We talked about this like ad nauseum in our fats and oils episode.
Yep.
If you have high cholesterol, it is because you are consuming too much sugar and you are damaging your body's ability to uptake and use the cholesterol that your body is manufacturing.
You're such a renegade, Elanie. You're such a renegade.
This one probably makes me the maddest because fat-free foods, and they do it for kids, like cholesterol-free foods. It's so sad. Kids need cholesterol.
They need
this
fat.
is why kids need to eat animal foods. They need to be eating animal fats because every hormone in our body, every cell in our body is made of cholesterol, and kids are the most susceptible to cholesterol-free diets because they're the ones who are relying the most on those hormones and those cells building because they're going through all these intense phases of growth. So if you are giving kids cholesterol-free foods, you are hurting their hormone health.
Love your kids. Give them nitrate-free bacon.
Right. So a cholesterol-free food is not healthy. Fat-free food is not healthy. Foods labeled as low in saturated fat or low in cholesterol still trap people into thinking they're making a healthier choice. Unfortunately, that's just not the case, and we've done a lot of harm with that type of marketing. So even now, you can literally go on the USDA's website, go to their Back to Basics page, the My Plate page, and they have that incredibly misguided dietary advice that animal products should be lean, that they should be skinless, that dairy products should be fat-free or low fat. Fat is where all the nutrition is. If you are buying quality, pasture-raised, or local farm products, they have so much nutrition in the fat as long as the people are treating the animals right and they're living their natural lifestyles out on pasture, right? Fat is where we store vitamins A, D, E, and K. If we're eating fat-free foods, we are not getting or absorbing fat-soluble vitamins, and we need those vitamins. Vitamin D is essentially a hormone in your body. So you need animal fats.
Preach, honey.
Yes. So fat-free milk is essentially water. Just drink water. Okay? Drink whole milk, raw milk, unpastured milk, non-shelf stable milk. Just think about what it is in its most natural form.
Yes.
As unprocessed as possible and eat it that way. Yes. Walk away from the low cholesterol foods. Amen. It's meaningless. It is not healthy for you.
Amen. Sister.
And frankly, they usually, in order to replace the animal fats or the saturated fats in the product, which are not bad, they replace them with industrial seed oils, which are bad because they still need a fat to bind the product or emulsify the product or give you the right mouthfeel that you're expecting. The vegetable oils, quote unquote vegetable oils, they're industrial seed oils, are way worse for you. So cholesterol free just means it's got terrible processed oils in it and probably a lot more sugar.
You're so good at explaining things,
thank
Elanie.
you.
Good job. Hopefully this is thinking through, friends.
I hope so.
Yes.
If not, Kay and I are benefiting.
Yes, we are.
Another misleading label are labels that say low sodium. So manufacturers of snack foods like chips and crackers and other snacks have responded to the consumer's misguided worries that salt intake is bad. And then they create sodium-free or low-sodium versions of snack foods. But when the salt content is lowered, usually the manufacturers have to make up for that in some other way because salt brings out the flavors of food. And the other thing that does that is sugar. So if you remove salt, you usually need to add in sugar so that it's not totally bland. Now, obviously, sodium intake can be a problem with our standard American diet or the Western diet because we're eating sodium-laden foods.
And processed foods.
Frozen dinners, convenience, packaged goods, things like that, right? They're very high in sodium, and it's like table salt in this processed form that our body is not ready to absorb. It's usually not like the good sea salt, Celtic salt. But if you're eating a nutrient-dense, varied diet, then high salt intake is usually not a concern, especially if the salt that you're eating is mineral rich. Except for the very small percentage of those of us who have sodium-dependent hypertension, which is only a small percentage of people who have hypertension, is salt a problem. It's just for those people. Okay. For the rest of us who either have hypertension that's not sodium dependent, which is the majority of hypertension, salt intake is not correlated with poor outcomes. And in a healthy individual who's a healthy weight, eating a good healthy diet, does not have hypertension, salt consumption is not a problem. Now, obviously, you can test and find out whether your type of hypertension is dependent on sodium. And I think that that's a good idea for anybody, because if you're going to work with it, then you need to know if salt does increase your hypertension. So always work with your doctor. I'm not saying not to. I'm just saying that if you don't have sodium-dependent hypertension, salt doesn't actually affect it, and in fact can be helpful.
It's so yummy.
Yes. So if you're eating a nutrient-dense diet, don't be afraid of salt. Don't fall for the low-sodium foods. We actually desperately need salt, specifically unprocessed mineral salts like Celtic sea salt, in order to maintain our body's electrolyte balance and stay healthy. I am planning to do an episode all about salt and iodine and all those things coming up here shortly. I have a guest hopefully scheduled who knows all about that we're going to bring on.
I can't wait. I'm interested in this.
So I'm not going to go into that detail here, because the salt could be its own multi-series episodes like the sugar was, so I'm not going to squeeze it in here. But suffice it to say, we need salt. We actually don't get enough of the good mineral salts in our diets today.
Yeah.
So sodium-free foods are kind of meaningless. And a lot of times if they're processed, they've just added sugar. Okay. Not healthy. Okay. The next label trick that is employed by manufacturers is made with X. Okay. Fill it in here.
Made with love.
Yeah. You might find products that say things like made with honey or made with olive oil, which sounds better. So if you're picking up a product and you're like, oh, cool, this cookie is made with honey, that is better than being made with sugar. And then you put it in your cart, right? Or you pick up a bottle of salad dressing and it says made with olive oil.
Yeah.
Great. This is perfect. I want a dressing made with olive oil. Yes. Okay. However, a label can say it's made with honey or made with olive oil and still include all those other crap ingredients.
Oh, it's not like exclusive.
Exclusive.
It's not exclusively made with honey.
Right. I have literally seen, because I label read just for the heck of it sometimes, whenever I guess I feel
in your free
like,
time.
Yeah, whenever I'm in the grocery store and I feel like getting mad. Right? So I'll look at like kids' products, for example, and there will be breakfast cereal and it can say made with honey. And guess what? The number 2 ingredient still is high fructose corn syrup. Because it was
big bad.
Also made with honey.
They just put in one little drop. Boop.
Yeah. Yes. And that's pretty common. It could be like the 10th ingredient on there, and sugar could be the 2nd ingredient on there. But because it was made with honey, they're not lying. Same with the vegetable oils in salad dressings. It can say made with olive oil, and it will say olive oil, like vinegar, olive oil. And then 2 lines down, it'll say canola oil, soy oil, corn oil. It'll still include all those oils.
Tricky. They knew that front label, that consumers.
Yes.
Just look at the front label.
Right. So with everything that we've talked about up until this point, it's all been like, don't just stop when you see organic. Don't just stop when you see gluten-free. Don't just stop when you see made with honey, made with olive oil. You still have to read the rest of the label to know what is in the product.
Harumph.
Bastards.
Gosh, it's going to be like a cathartic episode for you.
Getting out some aggression.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, the next thing isn't necessarily, it is a tricky label, but it's sneaky sugars.
Okay.
So sneaky sugars can be found in many, many foods that you might not expect, first of all. Second of all, they can come under names that you don't recognize. So you can find sugars in the ingredients list of all of the following, which are just examples of thousands of foods.
Okay.
Spaghetti sauces, salsa, canned vegetables like corn and beans, canned fruit, almost every canned fruit.
Yes, heavens.
Yogurt, goodness.
So much sugar.
Spreads and dips, peanut butter and other nut butters, salad dressing, bread, canned soups, applesauce, spice blends, Please fill in the blank.
So much sugar in all of it.
So it's not necessarily a
sugar.
sneaky label, but it's a sneaky food, right? You're thinking when you buy spaghetti sauce, this is made with tomatoes and basil and garlic and onions. This is good for me, but it might also be filled with sugar.
Yeah, why do that? I always think that, why did they add sugar to this? It didn't need sugar.
Yes, exactly.
Dang it.
I don't want my sauce to be sweet.
Yeah.
Okay? Just make it yourself. Same with the salad dressings. It's so easy to make salad dressing. I mean, I know it's not exciting, but just put olive oil and apple cider vinegar on your salad, or balsamic vinegar or something, right? Then you just know it's good. If you want to get fancy,
throw some seasoning in there.
Yeah, if you want to get fancy, put
a little
seasoning
mustard.
in there. It's pretty easy just to make your own everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other
says the homesteader.
Yeah, says the homesteader. The other sneaky thing about sugar is that it comes under many names on food labels. So you may not be saying sugar outright, but it could be called sucrose. Okay. It could be dextrose. Could be barley malt. That sounds healthy. It's not.
It does. It does sound and yummy.
Could be brown rice syrup. Could be high fructose corn syrup. Obvious.
Yep.
Corn syrup, fruit juice concentrate, still just sugar.
Yeah.
Brown sugar syrup sounds more wholesome, maybe because it's brown. I don't know. It's not.
Yeah.
Cane syrup, cane sugar, etc. So obviously when sugar is in the name, it's sugar, but there are lots of times it's not obvious. Anything that's ending in ose, so sucrose, dextrose, ose, OSE. Anything ending in OSE is a sugar. OSE is the chemical ending for any sort of sugar. So sucralose, glucose, dextrose, lactose, all of those are sugars, right?
Cool.
They're all just different names for one thing, which is sugar. Now, when you're reading a label, the ingredients section lists the content of a product in order of the highest amount of an ingredient to the least. So, if you don't know this, then I'll just give you a brief run through. But when you're reading through the ingredients list, they have to list the thing that is present in the highest amounts first. So if the first ingredient on a label is sugar in some form, high fructose corn syrup, whatever, that means that is the main ingredient. Okay. How products can get around that, because now consumers are getting smarter and starting to read labels, is that they can put different kinds of sugar into a product, and thus they can break it up. So maybe...
Oh, then it's not number one.
It's not number one because it's 5 different types of sugar. So they might have high fructose corn syrup and brown rice syrup and dextrose and malt, barley malt, whatever. They might have 5 different sugars, and then they can break them up in the label.
So altogether, they'd be the biggest ingredient.
Exactly.
Separated. Oh, smart. You know, these companies are very smart.
Yeah, well, they hire people to be smart.
Yes.
Yeah, to do those things for them.
Sneaky.
So that's a problem, because you might look at it and you might be a well-informed consumer who's looking at the label and you're like, oh, thank goodness sugar doesn't appear until like 5 ingredients down. I can be okay with that.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of sugar. Yeah. Just a little.
But then it's the next 5 ingredients just in different forms. And if you were just looking at sugar, it would be the first ingredient.
No wonder it tastes so good.
Sneaky.
So
you can look at the label, like the nutrition panel, and you can see where it says added sugars. That's what you want to look at, is how many grams of added sugars are actually in it, because there is where all those things will add up. So it may not look like sugar is prevalent in large amounts because it's further down on the ingredients list, but then when you read the nutrition label, you may actually see, 25 grams of added sugar. This is the equivalent to drinking a 16-ounce soda.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
I'm going to feel that tomorrow in all my joints.
Right. Am I missing anything? Sneaky label things. What has Kay seen? Sneaky label things. Have I missed anything?
You know what? I don't know if they would be, if you've already said the words, but there are just so many words that I can't pronounce. But maybe it is in all of those, like dextrose, monoglycer, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all of those.
Yeah, essentially, if you can't pronounce an ingredient,
yeah,
you might
don't eat it.
You might want to avoid it.
It's a chemical that shouldn't be in our body.
It's a chemical, right?
Yep, and like the preservative words, like
right?
those
Preservatives, like I don't know, monosodium benzoate or something like that.
Yeah.
And not all of them. I mean, some of them just are going to be present in foods because shelf-stable foods need a preservative in order to not expire within a day of being manufactured.
Yeah.
So you might see some things that sound fancy. You can always look up an ingredient in the EWG's database. So EWG is in the Environmental Working Group. They have a website. It's ewg.org. You can, while you're shopping, if you find a food that looks healthy otherwise, but it has an ingredient that you're not sure what it is, you can look it up in their database, and they rank everything based on toxicity studies.
Interesting.
So you can see, so on their ranking system, the lower the number is, the better a product is. So something that ranks a 1 or a 2 has no known toxicity in the human body. Something that rates like a 5 or a 6 or a 10 is known toxicity, and they'll tell you what the known toxins are. Okay. So if a food is carcinogenic, or if it's mutagenic, or if it can affect your like ability to conceive or could mutate your baby, then it tells you all of those things.
Okay, that kind of leads me into, I think on that same EWG, you can look up even cosmetic products and like cleaning products. Look up there too, or like, because even when you put something on your face, it still is going into your body, you know, like soaked in. So check even your other things that you consume in other ways.
Yeah, they have the Skin Deep database, which has all the cosmetic products, and you can actually search. They have a list of EWG approved products, which is pretty cool. So you can just search through their approved products, and then you can feel good knowing at least there's no proven toxicities. Again, there's toxicity data missing for a lot of things.
Right.
So just because we don't know that it's toxic doesn't mean it's not toxic. And the other thing we have to keep in mind is ingredients on their own may not have toxicity, but certain ingredients combined together may create a toxin. So it's that way with, say, a lot of the pesticides that we use that are approved. Individually, they may not be toxic, but when you combine a synthetic chemical with another, it can create byproducts that are toxic. And that is research we have not done extensively by any means. So when somebody is using 7 or 8 different pesticides, we have no idea what the health implications of that are. We've not studied it, and everybody's using different combinations. So just because a food doesn't have a discovered toxicity, it may just mean it's not been studied.
Which makes me think of like water bottles, right? So the huge thing now is BPA free. Right. But then the idea that, if it's a plastic water bottle, it doesn't have BPA, but what are all the other plastics inside of it?
Yeah, they had to replace it with something.
Yeah, that we're just not studying that chemical. So that's why I guess I do the steel water bottles as well. And so no, I think you've covered a lot of it. I think I did Whole30 a couple years ago, or maybe it was Dr. Hyman's way of looking at
the low blood sugar solutions or something.
Yes, something where when I look at a label, if it has more than 5 ingredients or it's a bunch of words I can't pronounce, just don't buy it. Yeah. And I kind of started doing that a couple years ago, and I'm like, okay, that's so good. And now I kind of look for like canola oil and sugar. I try to get things that don't have that in it. Yeah. And then I feel better. So,
it can be really hard. Again, like I said at the very beginning of the episode, I still buy certain convenience foods. So I might buy crackers. I'm not having crackers every day. Yep. But I might want them as like a snack. Something to have my like salmon salad or tuna salad with or something. So we are humans. I'm not trying to I am not trying to create any sort of like fear mongering. And if it's just a small percentage of your diet, okay, fine. Then like maybe those crackers are made with expeller pressed sunflower oil. Not my favorite, but I'm not having them every day, and they make up maybe 1% of my diet, and I'm not going to worry about it because I don't want to get obsessed with that. They're going to be part of my 20%. I know that everything else I'm putting into my body is nourishing it so that it can handle those types of intruders. Yes. But if it's making up the majority of your diet, which I think the evolution of at least my personal evolution into the health world as I'm thinking back on my college years was like being out on my own, eating a standard American diet.
Yep.
And I was vegetarian and I was living like at school. And the only thing at that time, I'm sure they have much better options now. But at that time, the only options for me for the cafeteria food was like pasta. So I was having that every day, right? And then
I forgot this.
Yes.
I forgot that you were vegetarian.
Yes, I was for 4 years.
Yeah.
I think the only reason my brain survived is because I was eating eggs and dairy.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you weren't, okay.
No, I was not vegan.
Okay.
Yeah. So, right. So that was kind of the evolution, right? For a person, they get the idea they want to be healthier. Okay, I'm going to be vegetarian, which is misguided, but we'll get into that another time.
Oh, we need a full episode on that.
I have one planned.
Okay. Yeah.
With Dr. Natasha, I want to bring her back.
Love it.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, so this is the evolution that I often see. Oh, I want to be healthier. So maybe that means they replace all of their gluten-full products with gluten-free products, or they go vegetarian, but they're still eating a lot of processed foods.
Right.
Or whatever. But that's the first step. And it's progress. It's still progress.
On the journey.
Right. Then the next step is to start realizing, oh, wow, this still has a lot of sugar. So now I'm looking for like low sugar. Oh, I don't want to have all these oils. So I'm looking for products made with animal fats. And soon, someday, some 10 years later, because my journey, well, I guess I was vegetarian like 15 years ago. Oh my God. Anyway.
We got old.
Got old. All of that to say, like my evolution and my journey over the last decade and a half was from a standard American diet to a completely, essentially whole foods diet where we buy from local farmers. We grow our own foods. We're not eating things with labels, except for maybe like 5%, 1 to 5%
That's
of
how
our
she
diet,
parties.
right? Like, because I'm still a human being. So, so I'm just saying you can get there, and you will get there. And if you're just beginning the health journey, don't be overwhelmed. Just do the simple swaps. Fine, get the gluten-free products. I don't care, but start reading the labels. Start looking for the options that have better oils, that don't have refined sugars. You'll get there. It's okay if processed foods are. If you are in a place where processed foods still need to make up a lot of your diet, just start there, because I started there. And 15 years later, you will be a certified nutritionist and you will be running a health podcast.
It's easy. I love it. I heard another podcast, I forget who it was, but they talked about their journey to get rid of sugar, and they were like, oh yeah, we would never eat something with so much sugar. And the host was like, okay, but like a couple years ago you were eating sugar. How long did it take? And both the people that were being interviewed were like, oh yeah, it took about 2 years to get. And so I realized that too. Like I've been less on sugar for probably
3 years.
3 years
3 or
now.
4 years, yeah.
So now it's definitely more like, oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
But you're right, like 6 months in, I still would have been like sneaking things in the closet, you know.
Right.
So
eating your frozen roll of cookie dough.
Yes, always in my freezer. And now I don't even need it. I don't even think about it. And when I have something so sugary, I'm like, what? It's so sugary and gross.
Yeah.
It's a syrup. Yeah.
It's a journey, all that to
journey.
say. So I don't mean for this episode to overwhelm anyone. I think it's so important for the consumer to be educated. And then at least if you're purchasing a product, you know.
Yeah.
You're doing it knowingly.
Making a conscious choice.
You're making a conscious choice,
Yes.
and that's okay.
Yes. Yes, it is.
But
Yes.
you should be aware. I think the biggest crime against humanity is that we're not aware of all these things that are in our food. We think we're making the healthy choice, but we're not. And so I want to help support your journey. If you're ready to make the healthy choice, I want you to be able to do that.
Yes.
And if you're not ready to make that decision today, that's okay.
That's okay.
You do you.
Yep.
We'll
make your choice.
We'll see you in a few episodes.
Yep, that's right. And don't be victim to marketing. Check your labels and
Go be
renegades. Thank you for listening to the Renegade Nutrition Podcast.
Please keep in mind that this podcast is an educational service that provides general health information. The content on this podcast is not a substitute for direct, personal, professional medical care and diagnosis. You should always talk to your doctor before making a dietary or lifestyle change. Go be renegades!
Go be renegades!